Hello and welcome back to Serpent Sunday. As always, I am your host, Morgan. This week, we're going to be talking about the difference between our friends, pythons and boas. Now, it's very easy to get boa constrictors and pythons confused because they are both very well-known families of constricting species of snakes that can be found in almost any different kind of environment, be it tropical, desert, scrubland, even semi-aquatic. And on top of this, both families of snakes are considered primitive snakes in that they still have two lungs and the remnants of legs and pelvic bones from their lizard ancestors of yesteryear. But to really know the difference, we need to look at these families pretty much side by side and figure out why they're not as related as originally thought. And to do this, we're going to first look at our friends in the Boidae family, the boas. Now, before we get into the meat of what makes a boa and a member of the Boidae family, we're going to pause for a second because I know some people are going to ask at some point, well, what about anacondas? Where do they fit into this mix? Well, anacondas are one of the 59 species that belong in the Boidae family. So right here is where they fit into the whole constrictor species mess and who's related to who. And saying that, we can finally move on with the rest of the Boidae family. Now, if you're going out into the wild looking for boas, you can pretty much look wherever you want because they can be found in the Old World, Africa, Asia, and the New World, North and South America, as well as New Guinea. However, they're not really going to be found in Australia and New Zealand and those surrounding islands, which is fairly unique for this family. Now, most species of boas are going to be viviparous, meaning the fertilization of the eggs and all the embryonic development is going to occur within the body of the female. And this will basically result in a live birth. However, there are 3 species in this family that are the exception and lay eggs, but it is thought that this egg-laying reoccurred at some point in this family line, meaning that for boas, live birth is the ancestral trait, not the derived trait. And the difference here is an ancestral trait is what the ancestor had, and a derived trait is what the present-day species has that is unique to that species, without throwing too much more of the taxonomy slang at you there. When it comes to prey capture in the boa world, it might go without saying, but they are constrictors. In fact, there are the most common boas that are boa constrictors, and that may seem a little bit redundant, but they are a fairly classic example of your constrictor in the snake world. And if you are to see a picture of them, you immediately think boa constrictor. But something fairly interesting about them is that many species of boa have some infrared sensitive sensors around the upper lip of their mouth. And this helps them detect heat coming off of their potential prey. Now, some species have these sensors set into pits, but that is not necessarily a requirement in the boa world. And these heat-sensitive pits are easy to think about if you try to think about a pit viper, like your rattlesnakes, that have very pronounced pits right beneath their nostrils and above their lips. That is what we're talking about. Just that if you're a boa that has them, you're going to have more than just 2. Now that we've talked about what it means to be a boa, let's move on to the Pythonidae family. And in this family, you're going to find about 40 species that were all previously grouped in with the Boidae family. Now, a fairly recent DNA analysis has shown that they are in fact their own distinct family that broke off from their boa cousins much earlier than was originally thought. And at this point of break, moved on to their own evolutionary path that is distinctly different from the boas. Unlike boas that can be found pretty much anywhere you go looking for them, pythons are only going to be found in the Old World, specifically in Africa, Asia, Indonesia, and Australia. Now, like their boa counterparts, pythons are also constrictors, and most of them do have those infrared sensitive sensors above their top lips. However, unlike boas that don't necessarily need to have them in these specialized pits, pretty much if you're a python and you have these sensors, they're gonna be in a pit. These can be especially seen in species like the ball python, which is easy to go take a look at because they're pretty much gonna be at any pet store or reptile expo you go to, since they are a popular pet snake to have. And unlike boas, pythons are going to be typically terrestrial, meaning they commonly are going to live on the ground, whereas boas can pretty much live almost anywhere they want, from treetops to waterways. Now, of course, there are some arboreal or tree-living species of pythons and semi-aquatic as well, but it's not as common in the python world as it is in the boa world. Now, completely opposite to their boa cousins, pythons are oviparous, meaning they lay eggs, and there are absolutely no exceptions to this rule in the python family. However, there is still something interesting you'll see as far as differences with the egg rearing goes. There are many species that just kind of lay them and leave them, but there are a few, like the rock python, that will coil around the eggs and generate heat with muscle contractions to aid in the incubation of their clutch. There's also some evidence to suggest that the females of specifically the rock python species may even protect the clutch and possibly the young once they hatch. However, I don't know how many more studies have been done to go into that particular parental behavior. Now that we've talked about what it means to be a boa or a python, if you circle back and look at them side by side, you can still see similarities in their morphology or how they look. And when this happens, it's because of something known as convergent evolution, where two species that are not necessarily closely related have ended up evolving traits that are very, very similar, because either they lived in a very similar habitat or at some point in their evolutionary history, they were presented almost identical problems and basically came up with the same traits to solve those hurdles. This can also be seen in animals like sharks and dolphins that are obviously not very closely related, but they have a fairly aerodynamic shape that reduces drag in the water in which they live. Well, it seems like we've reached the end of our journey into the differences between pythons and boas. I hope that you found some sort of entertainment and educational value along the way, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you have not already done so. Also remember to follow me on all my social medias. The links are down in the description below, and check out thereptilegoth.com. If you found any value in this and you would like to support the channel, assuming you have the means to do so, go ahead and check out the Patreon. Again, that link is going to be down in the description below, just like everything else. See you next time.